This is Kristin.
And I'm Steve, and you're listening to Cycling Together, a show about all things bikes, riding, and riding together.
Welcome back.
Another episode. So what are we talking about this week?
So we'll call this an entire episode inspired by Seen While Scrolling. It's inspired by a article I read in Mountain Bike Action magazine. It was an opinion piece called Trail Etiquette is Fading, but We Don't Have to Let It. A reminder for us to police our own riding groups and friends who might not know or care. And I thought, hey, I have the platform for that.
Right. All right. There's our topic.
Yeah. So let's lay some ground rules for ourselves. Let's talk a little bit about, I guess, what etiquette means. I think we should make sure we understand what etiquette means.
Sure.
Because we've had a lot of spirit of full disclosure. This is our second attempt at this episode because this is harder than I think we realized as we were going into it.
This topic
is hard. One is like is etiquette rules, is etiquette laws, is etiquette guidelines. And it's kind of all of those things and none of those things.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So I guess maybe more important than what is etiquette is why is this important?
Right. And we had talked about this in terms of etiquette being socially agreed upon norms, or in this case, the collective of riders, if you will.
Right.
But if you break an etiquette, you're just going to get the hairy eyeball from other riders.
You're not getting arrested because you went the wrong way.
Right.
I mean,
and nobody's going to kick you out of a bike park or a trail pass or anything for etiquette. But then you get to the rules, right? And there is overlap.
Yes.
There's
That's where we were getting a little stuck.
Absolutely.
But good etiquette does a couple of things. So first of all, it makes mountain biking safer for all involved, right? If we can all agree to some of the rules or what direction we are all supposed to be riding our bikes, that's safer for us as mountain bikers. It's also about making non-riders safer, right? Because we're really talking about shared trails. Right. Shared use trails. So it makes it safer for everyone, right? It makes knowing the rules for how to pass a horse makes it safer for you and for the horseback rider and the horse. It makes mountain biking more welcoming for those who maybe are new.
Yeah, and that's important.
It's really important.
Yeah, it's important.
It's probably the most important.
Yeah.
It's like less important for you ding-dongs that have been riding for 25, 30 years because you kind of like, sure, those are the rules, maybe the rules, whatever. But like if you're new, it really helps to know what's normal, right? You can see I'm like tense. And ultimately, it also protects our access to the trails because...
Yes, so by having bad etiquette or not following rules, either one, you can lose access to trails via the land managers, the private property owner who might be allowing you to use the trails, the bike park,
just a bunch of jerk faces.
The town forest associations, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, like that's why it's important. That's why we think it's worth doing. And we understand, especially after the pandemic, there are a lot of new people on the trails who, whether they're riding or not, just don't know. And like, what's even the forum to learn? Right.
Yeah. And you really learn by example, by what happens out on the trail with other riders. Right. This is not something, that's written down. We're going to be talking more here about mountain bikes. You have there's a whole other discussion for road riding and say the Velominati and so forth, those rules. But
right. Yeah. But they are kind of written down in different places.
And it is super important to make sure that we keep developing and growing new ridership, because the reason we have all of these expanding trails and all of these new bike parks and all of these new areas is because there are more and more people riding. And if they weren't there, there's no reason to build new trails, and things would die out, not expand.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's start with the triangle of sharing.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Right?
You might see
So-
these signs around.
Yeah. And the triangle goes, I'll actually post it in the show notes and if you're watching on the video, but it's got in one corner it has a mountain biker, in one corner it has a hiker, and in one corner it has a horse. And the arrows point. But the arrows are effectively saying that riders, mountain bikers yield to hikers, runners, and horses. Everybody. We yield to everybody. Hikers and runners yield to horses.
Yep.
And so that's the triangle.
Right.
We'll start with that one.
Yeah. You want to
That's the
just talk
triangle.
about that triangle a little bit with the hikers?
Yeah.
So, yes, mountain bikers have to be very, very pleasant, kind, courteous to hikers. You will find, however, that most hikers will actually step off the trail for you to pass. So in a lot of ways, yeah, but that is a reaction to common courtesy. If they are used to having a nice interaction with mountain bikers, they're more likely to do that for you as you come up on the trail.
And that's we won't air the episode that we killed. But I think that's where you and I were getting a little stuck. There was like, what is the rule? And then just kind of what normally happens.
Yep.
You're absolutely right. Like if it's a couple of hikers and they see a group of riders coming, they're going to step off the trail. It's easy for them to do. Everybody rides by going, thanks. Hi. Thank you so much. Nice to see you. Great day. Lovely day to be on the trails. Right.
Right.
But it's important as riders that we know that technically the hiker has the right of way, so that we're just on alert for them.
Yep.
Yeah,
and
so that's the difference between like rules and kind of how it translates, right? Or like we were at a group ride recently and we're riding and there were some walkers coming up. And yeah, technically they would have had the right of way to keep walking. They, of course, were like, no, please go. Like we met at the intersection and they were like, please go. In fact, one of the women was like, go, 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 go. And I was like, we're going. It's okay.
Yeah, and there are times where, let's say, you were about to start a downhill run, and I mean, it's certainly around here, you're talking maybe only a few minutes of a short segment, and there you see walkers down the slope. Well, then you obviously wait for them to get up to the top. Yeah, you have to wait maybe another 3, 4, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? But fine. Same thing is if hikers have started down a descent and you come up and you go, oh, they just started walking down. Well, then wait, because you're not going to have a good time.
You're not going to have a good ride anyway.
No, because now your fun descent is going to be interrupted, and it's going to be the whole "excuse me, pardon me, sir."
Yeah.
So you might as well just wait, give them time so that you can do your descent.
There was a guy that used to work at my office. He specialized in HR, and he always said, "You have to know the rules so you can make the exceptions." Right. And that's really what we're talking about, right? Like you need to know the rules, but then also there's always exceptions. Okay. Let's talk about those horses.
Yeah.
Let's talk about those horses because it can be, so they are prey animals, not prey, but prey. And that's because everything can eat them, right? They're prey. Right. They're prey for all.
Yeah.
And so they're very jumpy. And I will admit my first inclination when I thought about, we run into a lot of horses around because we're on a farming town. My first inclination would be like, be as quiet as possible. Shh, we are hunting wabbits, like, but that's completely wrong.
Yeah, it's completely wrong.
Right? Mm-hmm. So what are we supposed to do instead?
Talk.
Right.
So by talking, you on your mountain bike, you with your helmet and your bike and so forth, you are a contraption. You are an oddity to the horse.
I'm a contraption.
But once you start speaking, talk to the rider. How was your day? Have a nice ride. All that kind of stuff. The horse with your voice knows. Oh, it's a human. It's just a human.
Yeah.
And that settles them down.
And I will often say again, good. Kill them with kindness, my friends. Good morning, right? Good afternoon. What would you like me to do?
Yes,
right?
yes. Asking what you want them to, the horse rider wants you to do is a great thing.
Yeah, yes. Absolutely. So easy
and always
enough
stop.
To do. And
do not
stop.
ride by horses.
Yeah, don't assume.
Yeah, especially from the rear.
Oh, no. No. Yeah, absolutely. So that's horses. We'll actually have a link in our show notes. The Greater Boston NEMBA New England Mountain Bike Association did a great video a couple of years ago on how to pass a horse
or ride.
And I
yes.
thought, I thought that was great. All right. Now let's get into the mountain bikes themselves. And there is a rule that I think everyone gets confused. I get confused even when I try to explain it, and I finally figured it out the other day. The rule goes, uphill riders have right of way over downhill riders.
Yeah. Yep. And now that is
every time I say it, I get a little twisted.
Yep. This is from USA Cycling and the International Mountain Bike Association, but they both go by this rule.
Yeah, they do. And there were a bunch of videos. We did a lot of research for this, a bunch of videos of people explaining it. But here's the confusion, my friends. We're skiers, grew up in Vermont. When you say the downhill skier has the right of way, what that means is the skier downhill from you,
the lower elevation has the right of way. So because they're shushing down and they can't see you behind them, and we're all moving in the same direction. In mountain biking, what we're trying to say is the rider that is going uphill, the climbing rider, has right of way over the rider that is going downhill. So that's why it's partially confusing. Why do we have that rule? Why is that the prevailing rule? Why is that the prevailing rule?
What's the logic behind it?
The logic has to do usually with the rider climbing has a lot more difficulty starting again on a climb. Right. And where it does not have the difficulty for the downhill rider to get going again.
Right.
If there's a need to one of you to stop, which there can be on tight single track.
Yeah.
In some cases, that sort of right away, you can both stay on your bikes, you can both stay riding, but the downhill rider will have to slow down, perhaps track off the actual trail just a little bit to make that sort of handlebar room for you to get by as you're climbing.
Yeah, this is really for the narrowest of there is no passing. Yes, there are times where people can go.
But that's both of those are yielding in a way.
And again, in practice, it doesn't always come this way. Sometimes you're at the bottom of a hill, you see a group coming, you're like, "Come on down, guys," and then I will attempt it. Or if I'm going uphill and there is a place I can comfortably pull off, I see a group coming, I can say,
yeah, and we've been in a lot of festivals where there's a bunch of group rides going on, and it always seems like one group will just yield, and and this is not usually uphill or downhill. This is sort of rolling, flattish.
Yeah.
Just that nondescript. You're not necessarily descending. You're not necessarily climbing.
Right.
It's just.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about group rides and rides at big events too. I do find in those situations often there is directional flow because they're saying like, please everybody move in the same direction. And you can sometimes, like we did a group ride at West Hill Dam.
Yep.
Right. And every now and then I would run into a group coming at me and I'd be like, "Oh no." And somebody would go, "Oh no, we're the problem. We're going the wrong way."
Yeah. It was not
you're like, "Okay."
Yeah,
okay,
it wasn't a directional trail, but the
routes were all
the routes for that day were established in a certain direction.
So that we could all be flowing. Okay, there are exceptions. Well, let's start first with why do some people disagree with this rule? Why do some people think that, in fact, the downhill rider should have the right of way?
So, and there can be places that are posted where it's opposite of this. And you certainly have downhill mountain bike parks where obviously the downhill trail is like that, is always in one direction.
Yeah, exactly.
So the reason for the exception is that an uphill rider is going slowly, and if they were to stop pedaling, they're basically coming to, you can stop within 1 or 2 feet.
Right.
You can instantly stop. You also have the ability, since you're going slower, you can hear the downhill rider coming from a further distance.
Well, it really depends on how heavy you're breathing, and some of us are breathing very heavily.
That's true.
Sorry.
So, and whereas even a downhill rider in perfect control who could in fact slam on the brakes and stop with no problem for you. It's just a lot longer of a distance for them.
Right.
So some places see as it more of a safety thing where the downhill rider or the uphill climbing rider yielding to the downhill descending rider is a little bit safer for everyone, or I don't even know if safer, it's just more convenient, but
Yeah.
that's just not the overall presiding,
Yeah, no, that's not the rule. And the other reason I like, again, the rule being the uphill rider is again in a mixed, not in a like a Kingdom Trails, which is mostly mountain biking, right? Let's say
in Vermont.
here in our town where it is a true mixed trail, I think it's very good for the downhill riders to always have it in the back of their head that they do not have the right of way, because even we've all heard the story, right, of someone who's like, I almost died when the cyclist came down, and they probably didn't. They probably, the rider was probably in excellent control, but they're going so fast, the non-mountain biker, it feels scary, right? So I think that's partially the spirit of it, is like, y'all just have to be ready to scrub your speed. I think that's one of the reasons for it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the rule. As we said, there are exceptions. There's sometimes you might go to a trail system where they say, hey, we do it the other way. Right?
You might, you might see that, or and then obviously any trail that's marked one way only.
Yeah, like a flow trail that's marked to go.
Yep.
So, hey, look at us getting through that, not tense at all. That took us a while to practice. It's as I said, it's confusing. All right, so now we're on the trails with other riders, and we talked about when somebody's going downhill and somebody's going uphill. Now let's talk about if you're both going in the same direction. We have a couple of things, right? So number one is, how do you tell someone, should you tell somebody that you're back there? Right?
Right.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
There is nothing creepier. It doesn't happen on mountain biking so much, but in road riding, every now and then I'll be riding with a group of my girlfriends, and then suddenly you're like, something is off. And you turn around and there's some dude just back there riding his bicycle. And you're like,
just been stalking you off. Yep.
You're like, you just might want to tell somebody you're there. So don't do that. But in mountain biking, I mean, it's a little less obvious. You can kind of hear us huffing and puffing.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, so what in terms of just like
if I was out on the trail,
Yeah.
you didn't know me.
Yes.
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 And you're coming up behind me.
Yes.
Would you tell me you were there?
So if it's a single rider,
Yeah.
okay, I would not. If you ride up onto the wheel of a single rider, that means you're usually faster.
Yeah.
So in that case, you have to sort of make that decision. Did you work really hard and now you're on their wheel and you don't have the ability to pass?
Yeah.
But otherwise, I might say, I'm coming up on your rear. I'm coming up on your left if I'm about to make the pass or whatever.
Can I advise?
And I do that in hikers. I do that all the time.
Yes.
So I do usually yell coming up on your rear, right? With
not aggressively, just loudly,
with a decent amount of distance if I can.
Yes.
Yeah. You don't want especially with hikers, you don't want to get right to them.
Yeah. How do you feel about bells?
I don't mind a bell. To me, it's more of a path thing.
Yeah. I hate them.
You know what? Ringing a bell on a trail. Yeah.
I don't.
This might be a regional thing too, right? Because I don't know if it's something that people do all the time in some places. I mean, I know some people have bells on their bikes that ding all the time because you're trying to scare away dangerous animals, but we don't have that here.
Yep.
And yeah, if somebody, if a very fast rider came up on me and then just dinged, and then on the trail and then went by, that
it has happened to me.
Yeah,
someone's just behind me you, you're ding. And the problem with the ding is, first of all, it's just kind of obnoxious. Like, ding, ding. And you're like, yeah. But again, tell me what's going on. Hey, just so you know, I'm behind you. And maybe this is a woman thing that I just wouldn't mind somebody to say, hey, by the way, I'm back here. Right? Just so you know. Oh, I'm going to be passing on your left at the next, at the next opportunity. You are not, so I'm not obligated. Let's say I'm climbing something. Somebody comes up behind me. I did confirm this, a couple of articles that I read, right? So I'm on a climb. Somebody comes up behind me. It's single track, so we're not passable.
Right.
I am not obligated to stop and let them pass. I am not obligated to mess up my ride. I certainly can say, hey, once there's a take the pass when you can. Yes. I may say that. Yes. Like I'll be like, take the pass when you can. Yep. Or I'm going to pull right a little bit. Like I have done that to say, especially
and that's,
even in racing.
In racing, that's more common.
I've done it in riding too, though.
Is that... in racing, I've definitely encountered more people willing to, I don't want to say screw up their race or change, but they see just a slightly wider section of trail. Yeah. And then they'll hug one side, right? And give you the opportunity. And then you call out the side you're passing on.
I'm also realizing our difference in experience might be work it out with me. That I'm often the rider being passed and you are the rider doing the passing. that is more my experience. But even, like if I'm passing someone, maybe I'm passing, in a group ride, a young girl might be ahead of me because we're in a women's ride. And I'll be like, just so you know, I'm going to take the left. Yeah. I'm going to go down the left.
Yes. Right.
It's not a race. It's just a ride, but I'm going to climb the left just so they know. So I think the key here is communication. So I did find a couple of articles from like femcyclist.com and Red Bull, and they both said you do not need to pull. Is it a nicety? Like you get somebody coming up behind you that is clearly killing it and you're just out there.
Yeah.
They're clearly chasing Strava points and you're just out there tootling around. Then yeah, pull aside, let them go. But again, they can also ask, they can say, coming up behind you.
Yeah.
Can you, know? Yeah. So it's just communication.
You can always ask the pass.
Just be polite, which is just etiquette. So a couple of other things in that capacity. So say you're riding with a couple of people, you're going up something tricky, you get stuck.
Yep.
What should you do?
Oh, yeah. So as quickly as you possibly can, jump off your bike, which, I mean, when you hear getting stuck on a climb, that means your foot probably went down.
Yeah.
Yank your bike off that climb line as quickly as you can, because the person is probably not far behind you.
Yes.
In a group ride, it's usually seconds, and they want to give that climb an attempt.
Yes.
So just get yourself and your bike off the trail, off the line as quickly as possible.
Yeah. No, I mean, a little bit, and cheer them on. Really, good job, killing it, nice job. Yeah, I took or even say, I went on the left, wrong line, try the right. Like, I did it wrong. That said, it's okay to also give people a little space.
We do this all the time.
Approach a thing, right?
On our group rides.
Yeah, there's a thing where you may say, like, there's one up and over that it's a tricky climb up, it's a tricky climb down with a turn at the bottom. And I'll say to everyone, okay, just give everyone space and grace, right? Because you want to give them enough running room to give it a try. And then you also want to give yourself enough running room should they get stuck, that you're not right on their tail. Yep. So,
if you that's absolutely correct. If everybody's doing a difficult, like tech up, if you're so close to the rider in front of you that they didn't have time to get out of your way, it's really kind of on you for following too close.
Absolutely. No, you and I talk about this because every now and then we'll be riding and I'll get stuck and you're right on my bum and you'll be like, oh, and I go, dude, your fault. You were right on my bum. You know I stop frequently.
Right.
Makes frequent stops. That said, we have a rule. I did not come up with this rule. This isn't really an etiquette thing, but it is something I think we should all embrace, which is the no apologies rule. Which is you may try to get over a thing and you get stuck, and the first thing out of your mouth is sorry to get in your way. Sorry. But if you didn't get in my way, you got stuck, you pulled off, you did everything right. It's just a thank you for hanging with me. Thank you for your pay. This may be more women than men. But certainly I get a lot of sorries when you're riding, and you're like, there's really nothing to apologize for. You're just out of here having a good time.
If you bobble something that is just simple or just routine, and kind of back everybody up behind you for a second, right? And it's easy to say sorry, but it happens to all of us.
Right, exactly. As this is a rule in our group rides, no apologies. All right, which brings us to group rides. When I was growing up as a kid skiing, I skied with my dad and my brother and my mom, and it always went this way. Dad went down, then Brian, then me, and then we would stop. And a couple of minutes later, my mom would roll up, and then my dad would go. Absolutely did not wait at all. And he would do that time and time again until finally my mother was like, hey, bozo, I just got here. I just rested. And that is a big thing with mountain biking too.
It's a huge thing with mountain biking. With group rides, you'll always stop and reconvene at some spot. And then usually there's a few people off the back, and they'll get there in a minute or two, but then everybody goes. So the sort of the person struggling with the pace the hardest is the one who gets the least amount of breaks.
Screwed.
Yeah, making it just even harder.
Yeah, our Friday night group is a spicy group of riders. I am proud of myself every time I get through one of those rides, but they are notorious for this one, for this, like, I pull up, I'm always one of the last, and it's like swing. So how you fix this is, as the leader, you let whoever is at the back, whether that is a set sweep or that is just the last person, you let them give you a thumbs up to say, I am ready to go.
The readiness.
Yeah. That's just, if you don't like it, don't
do a group ride.
At some point, I do want to do a show all about organizing group rides and how I think we can do better.
That'd be a good show.
Yeah, thank you. But let me say here that I think any group ride benefits from having a sweep, a designated person who is the shepherd, the shepherd dog at the back, and utilizing what is called the second rider drop, which is when you drop, the leader will get to a turn and they will say drop, and the person behind them will stop and make sure everybody gets through, and then they jump in before the sweep.
Yep.
I have never been on as many rides with you where we have lost somebody due to the lack of the second rider drop and sweep.
Yeah, the alternative to that is not as good, but is the rider has to make sure the person behind them has made the turn.
Right. But the challenge with that is that if the group is still going fast, then...
Yes. It's a way to do it, but it does not work as well as second rider drop.
So let me just put my plea in for second rider drop. When we're talking about group rides, festivals are their own kind of thing because we have a lot of groups happening all at once.
Yeah.
We talked about how in those situations, often the routes will be set to make sure we're all traveling in the same direction as much as possible. Honor that. But I don't know where this fits. And I know this might be a little niche. But I guess remember when you're at a big event that there's a variety of skill and comfort levels going on in the groups that you cross. And sometimes your behavior can be off-putting.
Yes, absolutely.
So here's the story I'm going to tell. So we were at NEMBA Fest. I was sweeping a big group of women. It was probably a 25-woman group. And a group of guys came up behind me, 3 or 4 of them. I think they were demoing. I'm not sure what they were doing. They were having a great time. And they were hooping and hollering when they came up to me. And I said, hey guys, just so you know, there's a big group of women ahead of me.
Yep.
And so you might want to wait a couple of minutes. And they were like, yeah, no problem. We're going to wait. Well, they didn't wait. They waited like 30 seconds. And then they came up. They're living their best life on bikes, right? Woo-hoo-hoo! Like they're having a great time. The problem is the woman in front of me was a nervous wreck.
Yeah.
Right? She was like, we should just stop. We should just stop and wait. And I was like, no. Like, because we'll lose our group. I can't have you stopping. So I was like, you go. And then I stopped. Didn't get any pleasure from standing my ground. No, I was like, stop, you guys. Like, I was like, cut it out. You're having too much fun. But it was more, in your wild enthusiasm, just remembering that the groups you come across aren't all going to be experts.
No, and when you have big festivals like that and you have dramatically different skill levels, it is important for the higher skill levels to know that a lot of riders out there are nervous and are trying to find their way on a mountain bike, and things like that can just make them nervous, and it's ruining their experience.
Yeah. They need the festivals. The festivals you need them too, but go further afield.
It's just more. Don't push. Don't push them.
Yeah.
Verbally or physically with on their wheel with the bike. So I mean.
Yeah. It wasn't like they were being aggressive.
Right.
They weren't like, get out of our way. They just were, they were just having so much fun. They had just lost sight of what was happening or what they were doing. And, with group rides, what you want to try to do in those scenarios is when you get to an intersection, you may say to your group, hey, there's a group behind us. We're going to let them play through, right? We're going to let them. And so when they come, so you as a group might wait a little longer. Just be ready to wait. If you're at a festival, you're waiting.
Yeah.
Right? You're regrouping, you're waiting. Make sure you've built in enough
time
for your ride.
Definitely a slower pace, usually overall, when you're doing group rides.
Beating any PRs or Strabas.
Yeah, but it's still worth doing. They're still fun to do those group rides.
Oh, they're great. I will say on the flip side of things, I think it's important that you're honest about your skill level. So at that ride, actually, at that festival, I was like, I'm going on all the women's rides. I'm so excited to meet other women. And one of my friends goes, I'm not going to, because every women's ride ends up being a beginner's ride, which was a really funny take. But what I understood what she meant was like, it was like you had people who wanted to ride with women.
Yes.
And it may have been an intermediate ride, but they showed up and they're like, but it's women.
Right.
And of course, we're very welcoming. And so we finally split that group. We're like, actually, we apparently have a beginner group and an intermediate group, and we split them, which is another important thing. But it is important that we're all, when you sign up for a ride, you think about.
Yeah.
That you're signing up for the right
just
group.
Be prepared. If you it can be very helpful to ride with a group that's better than you are, but at the same time you need to be prepared at some point on that ride to maybe say, nope, I can't keep up, this is not right, and be prepared to make your own way back.
Yeah, and we've had the opposite of that, where the group started really big, and then again, it was not as advanced as advertised, and or it was going slower, or somebody just had to get back, right? Like
so most of the group was like, this is not. I wanted harder than this, or I wanted faster than this.
Most of the group was fine. There might be one or two people that were like, this was supposed to be more advanced than it is. The rest of us were fine, So it's just group rides are They're
their own beast.
They're their own beast. And so they have their own etiquette. All right. So that's about the people. Now let's talk about the physical trails.
Yeah.
We have mud season around here.
Mm-hmm. A lot of places have mud season in a way.
What? No. Why can't I ride during mud season?
So, a lot of places around the country actually they have certain organizations who control the trails, and they'll say this trail system is open or this trail system's closed based on the weather.
Yep.
And it could open or close day by day,
yep.
Right? Week by week. We don't have that around here. We are really blessed with an unbelievable amount of trails, but nobody in a lot of ways manages this. The New England Mountain Bike Association will come into certain areas and do trail maintenance and maybe build some bridges, and then they have certain areas where they're really more active than others. But otherwise, this is just town by town land. So anyway, we in the winter time, what happens if you ride in the mud is that those tracks will freeze in place.
Okay.
And that's what you don't want. You don't want all of those muddy tracks freezing into ruts.
Right. But even this spring, like
the
Rocky Narrows, there's some places, like there's some trail systems that are closed to mountain biking.
Yep. Through end of March, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Maybe the end of April in some cases.
Winter to March.
And so you get into spring, and then it's really just creating a whole mess out there in the trails.
Right.
Yeah.
So respect
and that's what they don't. Right. We have a lot of trails here in New England, which it could rain all day, and then they're rideable an hour later. So.
Well, it's funny because to your point, it's not policed necessarily by the trails, but sometimes it can be policed by other mountain bikers, and our town forest drains incredibly well. You can ride it all the time. And there'll be times we'll do a ride in the town forest and I'll be like, mark that Strava as private. I don't even hear from people who are like, why are you out there riding right now? Because we'll shame each other.
Oh yeah, sometimes we will shame each other, right?
That's right. Yeah. Like they'll shame, what are you doing out there?
You tend to see that more in this winter, early spring season.
We want to. I need everybody.
In the summertime, the trails, even the muddier trails, they just so quickly resolve themselves.
They recover better because there's more grass and stuff. Got it. Yeah. But mud does happen other times of the year. How should one ride? I was surprised by this too when I first learned it. How should one ride?
Oh, this is a big
muddy
one.
Spot.
Yeah, if there's a muddy spot or a puddle or something, you should go right through it down the middle. So, and you're going to see this if you start once you notice it and you pay attention to it, you'll see it everywhere. But what tends to happen is, there's a muddy spot, there's a puddle, and people go around the edges. And so now this single track trail that is 18 inches wide is suddenly 5 feet wide around this puddle because everybody has worn down the sides of this area, this muddy area. Right. And so then the trail gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then that actually spreads out further along the trail as well, making the whole trail wider overall. So, so the best thing to do is go right through the mud or the puddle.
You're mountain biking. You're getting dirty. Go for it.
Yeah.
Right through.
If you don't want to get sprayed, and this happens, there'll be places where we're riding. It is bone dry. And like you've been riding for an hour and you were completely dry because the trails are in great condition, and you come across this wet area. And you're like, I don't want to get that spray all over me. Well, if you go slow, just it doesn't spray up on you, and then you're through. Yep. But you ride down through the water.
You ride through the water. Yeah. And if there are a couple where there might be some planks that have been put down, try to ride along those if you can. Those have been put down as bridges. I'm going to use the term bridge real loose when we're talking about a couple of pieces of wood.
Right.
Which is a good, just a good skill to have, to be able to ride along those wood pieces. And these are all, so the next one's, basically you shouldn't be editing trails, right? You shouldn't be making trails wider. You shouldn't be, here's a big log that's been here. Here's a big log. It's been here a while. Yep. It looks like people are riding over it, but I can't ride over it. You shouldn't
so I'm gonna cut it out.
Don't do that.
That's a big one. So any sort of fresh logs, trees that have fallen, you could take out, and nobody's gonna really complain about that, especially ones that are impassable. But yeah, if there's an old log in the trail, clearly it's been there for a long time. people are going over it. You might even see chainring marks into it
Yeah.
and so forth. And this actually goes for rocks as well in a lot of cases. Yeah, don't touch that. Just because if you can't get over it and you want to move it or modify it, don't do that.
Well, keep in mind, modifying could also mess up erosion. Like some of these things might be preventing.
Possibly, yeah.
You know, they may not have been put there intentionally, but they're doing something. That's why they haven't been moved. The other one is don't make your own trails without asking permission. That seems obvious, but we've had a couple of situations.
That happens everywhere, but yes.
Yeah. You had one where people were trying to beat the Strava, and what are they doing?
So that's called a Strava line. So if you have a twisty trail, people will cut off a twist in the trail to go straighter and therefore go faster. And because it's a minor change in your course, the GPS track on Strava is not sufficiently. Yeah, okay. It can't tell that. So you still get the time for that segment. Yeah, Strava segments are bad. Strava has caused a lot of physical trail issues of people creating new lines to go faster. And sometimes I will, when I see one starting, I will take deadfall and block that and sort of encourage people to take the actual worn single track trail.
I'm sorry. You should not take Strava that seriously.
Yeah, that's not how the world works anymore.
I know it doesn't, but it's so ridiculous.
Well, here, while we're talking about Strava, and etiquette.
Yes.
Strava has also ruined a lot of, we'll call them group rides, but rides with buddies, right? Okay. So, where you're riding, let's say you're riding along with 3 of your friends, and then one of the riders will go, guys, I'll see you at the end of that trail. I'm gonna go do this, try to get a best time, right? So that happens all the time, right?
Really?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Fun fact that has never happened to me on one of my one of my group rides.
Yeah.
Really? Mm-hmm. Yes. It just kind of not kills the vibe, but
it changes
the vibe.
Yes.
It changes.
Depending on how the person does it, it can.
So the whole idea though about this is we risk losing trail access when we mess around with the trails.
Yes, when we're jerks or we mess around with the trails physically.
Yeah. I mean, it's even when we get permission to build trails, we can still get in trouble because we didn't do it quite to the level to what they thought we were doing. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine their reaction, and you get these emails.
Oh, and
that are like, this is going on in this town, and if you've heard anything, keep an eye out and spread the word, which is what we're trying to do here today.
And if you do happen to find yourself on a trail that is not an official trail,
okay,
then I would say do try not to put it in Strava. So many
definitely don't make it a segment.
Yeah, so definitely don't make it a segment. But land managers have found many private tier trails, many pirate trails, by using the Strava heat maps, and you can see where people are riding, and
genius.
And that's how these things get shut down and found.
That is some next level sleuthing, and I am here for it. I approve. All right, so that is our take on. I mean, I think we could talk about etiquette and rules and the things that have driven us nuts over the years, but I think that's a good baseline for people. So we will have links in the show notes to kind of some of the different rules in the IMBA and the USA Cycling. But if you guys have any other etiquette rules or kind of rules of your own that you think should be etiquette, feel free to send them in.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. We're going to be polite, man. Nothing says polite like mountain biking. Okay. So let's get to our new segment.
Oh, from the shop.
From the shop. From the workbench.
From the workbench.
Stand. We haven't come up with a name yet.
So every week, every day, I just come all across a little tidbit of something that's probably worthy of talking about. So the thing, I guess, that came up this week for me that just was one of those items that stood out was the so Cannondale released the new, I think it's called the Trail One.
Okay.
And it is their new entry-level mountain bike.
Okay.
And there was an article on it because it's $950, and for that price point, you get a dropper post, which is unheard of sort of at that price point.
Yeah.
And I know my first impression was, and overall still, is that, wow, that's, Cannondale's trying. They're trying to get the price down on a decent entry-level mountain bike with one-by drivetrain and so forth.
I was going to say, whatever happens
post.
with the rest of this conversation, I want to make sure that we say kudos for trying. Because
correct.
if I think both of us have a concern about how to grow cycling, in particular mountain biking, it's that the cost of entry has
gone way too high.
Extraordinary,
yep.
Right? And so I'm psyched that they're trying. Now what's the issue?
So I dug into the specs, and then this is sort of like indicative of it's an example of what I see in other brands and other bikes of what happens. So the Cannondale is using Shimano's new Q's group set, CUES.
Okay.
And Q's is designed to replace a lot of their former entry-level group sets, like Olivio, Acera, and so forth. So the thing is with Q, so Q's comes in 9-speed, 10-speed, and 11-speed versions.
Okay.
But every single one of those versions uses the same chain, which is an 11-speed chain designed for their cassettes they call Link Glide.
Okay.
And so this particular Cannondale is a 10-speed version. So it has a 10-speed cassette in the back.
Okay.
But what you often find product managers doing is speccing, we can save $2, so we're going to use this chain instead of the chain that's designed to be used with this system. And that's what Cannondale did. But Cannondale used the KMC chain, which I use often for my 6, 7, 8, and even sometimes 9-speed systems other than Q's. They're good chains, but they use the KMC 10-speed chain. Well, Shimano's Q's system is designed to use an 11-speed special chain for Link Glide, which is narrower than the 10-speed chain. So here's an example of a product manager who was saving money and doesn't understand bike parts. And this is a constant thing with mechanics. We constantly see engineers, product managers who don't understand mechanics.
What's the consequence? So I buy this bike.
Yep.
It's got a chain, not the preferred chain.
Mm-hmm.
What's the experience and how would it be different if I had the proper chain?
I'm sure it works.
Right?
But
if you pedal, it moves.
Right.
Okay.
But it is not going to work anywhere near what it should.
Like the shifting.
It's not. It won't be as smooth, as crisp, as quiet, all that kind of stuff.
How
is
much
durable.
Is the Shimano chain that it should have?
I believe the one for that would be under $30.
How much did Cannondale save?
I don't know what they pay from the factories
$30
in bulk,
though.
but it's only probably a $1 or $2 they probably saved.
Cannondale.
And I see this. So it has become increasingly common where drivetrain systems really should have the chains they were designed for.
Okay.
That is not the case in the past. But with Shimano Q's, that should really use their 11-speed chains. Then you have Shimano's 12-speed group sets, mountain bike group sets, their upper-level group sets.
Yeah.
I see a lot of KMC 12-speed chains put on those bikes. Those are okay, but with Hyperglide Plus, of what this is called, it is pretty much a night and day difference on how well it shifts with Shimano's Hyperglide Plus chains.
So the good news is, if somebody did buy this bike, already getting it at a slamming deal of $950, right? They could replace the chain.
Yeah.
It's an easy upgrade.
And I have not ridden this, so I don't know how it does with this KMC chain. but it is the wrong chain.
Let's get us to a Cannondale dealer. I want to check out this bike. That's exciting. As I said, it's exciting that they're trying, and a little frustrating when I can see how that could be frustrating.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Something to actually keep an eye out for. That the whole point of that is really just that a lot of brands will change the chain inappropriately.
Does your chain match your group set?
Yeah. So SRAM group sets that need what's called the flat top chain, you will never see that I'm aware of a company spec the non-flat top chain when it needs to be. It's so different. Yeah.
That's what I have.
Yeah. So
That's what I have with the transmission.
Yes, you do have that with transmission. Yeah, but
it's
also for the 12-speed road as well.
Yep. All right. That was an excellent segment. We will try to do that every show. We're going to wrap up with some listener comments. This is from Jeff, who commented on our January 21st episode. This was about riding mountain bikes at night.
At night, okay.
And he said, Steve mentioned having a brighter light on his bars and a less bright one on his helmet. This runs counter to what I've always heard, which is to have the same light, not just lumens, but make model settings on both.
Okay. So, I can address that.
What say you, Steve?
So the higher the lumens in a light, the bigger the battery. And so the whole thing, the bigger it gets and the heavier it gets. Okay. And so for me, I like
and your wife.
Yes, and you, a lower weight light on my helmet. Right. So if you put a very big, heavy light on your top of your helmet will tend to sort of wobble around more.
Yeah.
And you actually can sometimes feel it in your neck because your head is not used to that extra weight wobbling around on top.
Right.
I can. That comes to me. And then also the pinch points behind your ears of the cage that usually you're dialing down to fit your head. Those actually compress the back of my head a little more if I have a heavy helmet, and then I get these like weird aches behind my ears. So I notice if I have a really heavy light on the top of my helmet.
And I can imagine if you started with a matched set of lights, one dies.
You're
gonna end up with an unmatched
you lose
set
one.
Anyway.
So most people, that's the reason why most people are not going to have a match set, is because you get one light for your bike and then you discover, you know what, I do want one for my helmet, and then you move the bike light to the helmet because it wasn't a very bright one, and then they don't make the same light anymore. So that's just why people don't tend to have the same make and model for both lights.
No, and I can totally see that. We did have, this was in our cycling team Slack group that Jeff made this comment, and Chris, another one of our riders, replied that he actually has the Donati XML4, which is a helmet light that the battery is actually in his pocket.
Yeah, so that
didn't even occur to me that was
one
a thing.
style of light you can get. So that is a way you can get really, really bright lights on your helmet for a lightweight because there's no battery there. So it's just the bulbs with a wire going down to a separate battery pack, which you can also use in the front of your bike as well, and then the battery pack straps around your frame.
Here's a question I have always wondered when we talk about Jeff said something about, or Jeff and Chris both said something about running into things, forgetting that they had a light on the top of their helmet, like running into branches. But is there a risk when you put something on your helmet? I've actually wondered this about like the GoPro, of it like breaking your helmet if you crash, like in a crash scenario. Does it compromise the helmet?
So that's actually a really good question. I don't believe it compromises the helmet. I also don't. One, usually your light is on the top of your helmet.
Yes.
And if you crash, the hitting directly on the very top of your helmet is also way less likely.
It's funny that you say that, because that is the thing I say to anyone who comes to the shop and I fit them for helmets and they have the helmet back, and I'm like, okay, the helmet is not to protect you from stuff falling on top of your head. It's And I always have to adjust it like to cover their forehead because I'm like, it's to protect you if you crash forward, right? It's for the frontal lobe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the backal area. But, but it's funny. Here I am asking the very same question.
Theoretically, you could say roll your neck in a weird way because if you hit on the top of your head, right, instead of being a rounded surface, now you have this protruding item, which is then going to, cause your that being said, I don't think I've ever read an article that
1 in a million shots
says don't do it, right?
Yeah. No, I've had the same question about when you put a GoPro on like your body and then you're skiing or like I think, what if I crash and now I have a GoPro flinging itself into my sternum? Like,
yeah, but again,
I know
you crash, right? So
I'm a mom, so I'm risk averse. No, I think about all the ways that you could kill yourself.
One thing on the lights on the helmet, I like a light. So most lights say how much they weigh on the packaging, and I like a helmet light that's around 150 grams or under, ideally. So trying to get, for me on my helmet light, trying to get as close to about 1,000 lumens as I can,
but
with the run time that I want.
Yeah.
But light.
At the weight you want.
Yeah, at the weight I want.
The one you have on my helmet is like, you can't even feel it.
No, and that one's that one could be brighter, right? So that's
I love it. I like it. All right. Well, I think that's it. I do have a little tip for anyone. I'll post a picture of this. I'm actually wearing a Pearl Izumi black wool cycling jersey, and I got it on Poshmark, and it might be my new favorite piece of clothing. It was a banging deal. I think I spent $35 on it for this great. So anyone who's looking for gear, go check out Poshmark. I've gotten some really good deals over there.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's
my little tip.
There's cycling stuff on there.
Yeah, there's cycling stuff. I've gotten I've gotten mountain bike pants. I got this, and the woman who sold this to me gave me a jacket too. So, in my favorite color, red. All right. Well, I think that does it for us. So we're gonna wrap this up. Cycling Together with Kristin and Steve is a production of Steve the Bike Guy, an independent bicycle shop in Eastern Massachusetts, and Sundin Marketing.
And if you like this show, please leave a review or share with a friend. And for the show notes, links, or to leave a comment, question, or topic suggestion, please visit cyclingtogether.bike. And you can follow the shop on Facebook, Instagram, and at YouTube at Steve the Bike Guy.
Thank you for listening and for joining the ride.
See you next time.